From ghost ships to historic sinkings, there is a lot to know about these events, and today we are visiting the abnormal with one of the most famous ghost ships ever, the Mary Celeste.
Perhaps one of the biggest mysteries ever. In 1887, the Mary Celeste went on a voyage across the oceans and completely vanished. It went off radar and completely disappeared. 2 months later, it was found floating adrift and completely empty.
It was a miracle. The crew had completely vanished. The lifeboats were missing and everything was in perfect condition, apart from the pumps which had been dismantled.
The ship had a 6-month supply of food, and the weather around the area where it disappeared was perfect sailing conditions. The captain was an experienced man, and the boat, oddly, wasn't insured, meaning that it couldn't be fraud. So, what happened?
The best theories are the likes of sea monsters, slaves, and pirates, but truth be told, no one really knows. Most likely the captain thought there was a storm and evacuated everyone onto the lifeboats, although that still doesn't explain the missing cargo and dismantled pumps.
The history of the Mary Celeste is a curious one, and the ghost ship and vanished sailors have been reported to have been seen around the surrounding islands where the crew vanished. Even after the empty ship was recovered. If you are interested in this story, try searching up the Mary Celeste, and you're bound to be confronted with many theories to pique your curiosity.
From ghostly hauntings to sunken ships, we are diving deep into the ocean to visit the ruins of the Titanic.
On the 31st of March, 1909, the legendary Titanic was finally finished. It was 882 feet long and was one of the most spectacular pieces of tech in its time. Passengers would have to pay £3,300 to board, and the ship itself cost 825 tons of coal to move. It was perhaps the greatest of its time. However, 4 days into its voyage, disaster struck.
The $200 million vessel soon hit disaster, though. 4 days into its voyage, Captain Edward Smith of the Titanic received an iceberg warning, telling him to change course to avoid hitting it for the safety of his passengers. He ignored the warning.
4 more warnings followed, and Edward Smith was beginning to doubt himself. For some odd reason, he had ignored the warnings, but now the iceberg was in sight and he was having doubts. At the very last minute, he changed direction and tried to dodge the iceberg. He failed.
The edge of the iceberg scraped against the edge of the ship, puncturing the hull and causing huge leaks at the edge of the boat. It was 2 a.m, and most passengers were asleep. The warning wasn't heard by 1/5 of the passengers. In 10 minutes' time, it was too late for them.
The boat only had enough boats for a third of its passengers, so women and children were prioritised. The sea was -2 degrees, and half of the lifeboats never made it to safety. In total, it took 160 minutes for the famous ship to sink. During this time, 2,224 people died, 80% of its passengers.
One of the people on the lifeboats who made it to safety was Violet Jessup. She was an Argentinian nurse, flight attendant who had married a rich man, and the Titanic was the honeymoon after their wedding. Her husband died, but the remarkable thing about this woman was that she survived 3 different ship sinkings.
On the Britannic, before she was married, she couldn't find a lifeboat, so she jumped straight into the freezing ocean and was later rescued by a fisherman. 3 years later, she boarded the Olympic. There she survived another disaster by swimming to safety, and afterwards she survived the Titanic and a car crash.
Sadly, she died at the age of 82 of a heart failure, a sad way to go for someone who was such a survivor.
Thank you for listening about surviving ship sinking, haunted cruise and oceanic disasters. And we hope you tune in next time.